Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. Just a little bit more on Alice Springs. I want to talk about this because the impact that it's had has been startling, to say the least. We've got the ABC apologising for lack of content, lack of broadness of their reporting on what was happening in Alice Springs, and we have a lot of the other media sort of beating them up over this, and rightfully so, because when I first saw it, I thought too that people that were being interviewed had one particular view, and they didn't seem to have a broad spectrum of others, particularly any interviews with Indigenous people who participated in the evening on Monday last week. So what I was surprised to see and delighted to see, in fact, and I don't think this is going to get any coverage elsewhere, was a recent report by the ABC on Indigenous groups saying the problem in Alice Springs much more complicated than just alcohol. And I was really interested in having a look at this. It runs for about 8 minutes, but I think it's worth reviewing. I'll stop it somewhere along the line, talk about some of the things that people say, but most of you have got YouTube, could probably find that. It was a 7:30 report a day or so ago. And it particularly is interesting because there's some people in this report who actually talk about the real issues that's happening in Alice. And we certainly need to be mindful of what those issues are. So without much ado, I'll get straight into it and we'll have a look at what that ABC report has to say.
The streets of Mparntwe Alice Springs transform after dark. And among the nightly chaos are kids.
Where's your brother? Where's Andrew? Our patrol service is to take people away from the CBD, to help people get home to a safe space. The town kids are being picked up between the hours of 10:30 and 2 to 2:45 a.m.
This man's come into town to look for a family member.
She's been out for 2 nights now. Hidden Valley.
I think that this is a story that isn't talked about very often, and that is about the services that are available in Alice, the types of work that they do, and the impact that they have. And this is one of those services. I'll talk a little bit later about the lack of financial provision available to local councils, the Alice Springs Council, in this particular instance. And it's worth noting, I think, that there are these services that are fabulous services. They do the job that they're supposed to do. The problem probably is they're poorly funded and there aren't enough of them. So I think this is a really positive story, and I'm so glad that the ABC have put it out there.
Yeah.
The patrol service drops kids home or brings them to this community centre. But other young people use the space too, like Darius.
I'm playing football, basketball, and games. I come after school because it's fun, and they got pool tables, and you eat dinner and lunch. I never been walking town.
Stay tuned to what this kid says, because I think this kid is just absolutely brilliant.
Why
not?
Because my mum told me never to.
Why doesn't she want you to walk into town?
There's trouble.
Isn't that gold? Isn't that gold? And we should hear more of that sort of response, I think, to kids and how their parents are telling them not to go into the city because there's trouble, and the kids are doing what their parents tell them to do. I think it's fabulous.
Northern Territory police data shows a 60% rise in property damage in Alice over the past year, as well as a spike in break-ins. There's also been a 55% rise in alcohol-related assault.
In Alice Springs, there are certain inescapable realities to running a business, particularly after dark in this community. Staff are feeling...
I just want to say that I think this guy is brilliant too. He takes this problem which he is confronted every day, and he has a social equity stance that I think is fabulous from a business owner in Alice Springs.
Feeling afraid. There's no other way around it.
Lachlan Moulton runs a commercial cleaning business with staff who work overnight.
They operate under a more or less constant, sort of imminent threat of violence, which is difficult for them, and it's difficult for us as well. We've had staff assaulted, attacked, home invaded. We've had property stolen regularly. So we've reached a point of exhaustion with it, frankly. Yeah, we're at a real tipping point. Yeah.
The Alice local wants the broader community's concerns heard.
How do you give a voice to a people and give power to a people that badly need it, whom you've disenfranchised on one hand, and then on the other hand, talk about removing their basic civil liberties and denying them the capacity to make the same choices around their lifestyles that the rest of us as Australians make? So how do you disempower them on one hand, yet protect them on the other, and protect all of us?
The crime surge has prompted the government to reimpose alcohol bans across Central Australia. Communities can vote to opt out.
We've heard loudly and clearly that the matter and decision of alcohol on community needs to be one that is made by the entire community, and it is important for all of us as Territorians to tackle these issues once and for all.
Intervention-era alcohol bans have ended in the Northern Territory.
Community leaders in Alice Springs say there's been a steep rise in alcohol sales.
For the first time in 15 years.
In July last year, alcohol restrictions, originally imposed under the Howard-era intervention and continued by the Labor government, were lifted.
You get really worried that Aboriginal Voices had been saying for a very long time the lifting of these restrictions is going to happen, and yet we have not invested in our communities, we have not invested in our families to be able to withstand what might happen as a result of lifting alcohol restrictions.
Catherine Little is the Chief Executive of the National Peak Body for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children, and says it's not just alcohol driving the issues in Alice Springs.
When you look at all the investigations that have resulted as a result of the despair that we see in our communities, they all point to poverty, and that poverty absolutely is rooted in a lack of self-determination. We know that you need to be supporting families so that they are able to work with their children and give them the safest possible starts to life.
At Amongana, a remote community outside Alice Springs, a youth program keeps these local kids busy.
I was coming here since I was small, probably 6 or 7. I would just come here, do sports, maybe had a little bit of feed, and just stick around, help out, and then go home.
Leroy saw grog use growing up and used the youth centre for support.
What kind of stuff do people go through here?
Mostly it's just fighting a lot, yeah. Alcohol, drinking, and yeah, smokers too.
The 16-year-old now works for the program he grew up with.
It's just silly how they're going on in town, running amok, and that it just makes people who got nothing to do with that put them in a bad, you know. I don't really go into town anymore now. I just like it out here.
This youth program, with 7 others run by the local council, has had an impact in recent months.
When we do have good concentrated programs, then the kids are engaged and they don't have time to go and do stuff they shouldn't do.
The council, which runs the program, says it has a funding shortfall and is at risk of shutting down.
They used to bring us out here too when I was small, take a swim, get kids to do, you know, activities and stuff, everything. Get them to enjoy it out here, instead of them sitting out boring back in the community.
In a statement, the federal government told 730 it fast-tracked a one-off payment of $400,000 to the Council for Youth Programs in November. The Northern Territory government said it has funded the council's youth diversion programs with more than $8 million over 4 years.
I think the point is that we need, it's a really good report because it was telling us that the programs are available. They're probably relatively expensive, but in terms of turning people's lives around and the difference that they make in people's lives is probably not only going to save lives, but is an inexpensive way of ensuring that people have a better life. They're healthier, they're mentally better and physically well. So I think these programs are really valuable. And we need to be making sure that the communities have them. And one of the other points that came out of that I think is really important is about the Indigenous people making those decisions themselves as to how they wish to have their communities, how they wish to empower themselves in order to be able to make decisions that are the best decisions for their community. And there are plenty of Indigenous people who I believe want to do just that. They just don't have the resources on many occasions, most of the time, to do what they need to do for their own communities to keep themselves and their children safe. So let's give them more money. Let's give them more resources. Let's make sure that they're the ones making the decisions that are going to impact them. Thanks everybody for watching. I just want to say before I go, please connect to my webpage, and also I do ask you to subscribe to my channel to get more notifications as time passes. So thanks everybody for being here. Take care, look after yourselves and be safe.